stuck, and people are afraid of technology. I actually think that technology has been one of the greatest forces in terms of bringing goodness and happiness and equality to the world. So let me talk to you a little bit about kind of where this is going. Okay, there you go. So when people talk about black hair, they're actually talking about this. It's black screens that have been doing broadcasting one-way communication on a 2D type level. You know, we're animals that have evolved in a 3D environment, and we've been forced to be communicating, interacting over the last 30 years or 50 years in terms of a 2D environment, in terms of the 2D screen. We need to look forward to see kind of where we're going with 3D, because I think that's where we're going to be able to get the most value out of communicating with each other and with utilizing the technology that we're building. Is this not working at all? So the next 50 minutes, I'm going to take you on a little field trip, a virtual field trip in your mind, to kind of where the future is, and to be able to, I think, give you some new ideas and perspectives to think about. Okay, so there's still. Sorry, I put a lot of animation expecting it to usually work. So we're actually at a very important technology inflection point where pretty much every major thing that you've seen in sci-fi movies are all converging and happening at the same time and maturing at the same time. Right? Can we go back? So, genetic technology is going to help essentially solve a lot of our health issues, make us live a lot longer. Artificial intelligence making us a lot smarter. You have technology that's going to give us unlimited power, and with power, actually, we're going to be able to do a lot more things than we've ever done. And the metaverse, in terms of a new form of communicating, in terms of the 3D world, and essentially replacing our senses, augmenting our senses with a new technology. Next. So let's talk about the metaverse. I'm going to focus mostly today on the metaverse and on AI, because I think those are two pressing technologies that actually come together, and it's going to bring us into a new era. So what is the metaverse, right? The metaverse has been very dystopian from all the stories. All the stories you see, it's, whether it's Snow Crash, where it was actually the first coin to Ready Player One Matrix, it's about, having a very shitty real world and then you escape to this virtual world, right? We don't really want to have that as the ending. We want to have it the opposite, where we have a great physical world and a wonderful virtual world, and I think it's actually very possible. Next. Artificial intelligence, the same thing. If you go back to every major movie about AI, it's always ended up with I'm using remote control here. It's always ended up with some AI robot who gets too smart and then takes over the world. I think we can avoid that, right? And a lot of the hysteria that's happening. A lot of hysteria that's happening these days is because media has been brainwashing us that there's definitely real risk, and I'll actually address some of those things. But I think there are definitely ways to get around it. So, I'm more calm about these things because I've actually gone through these cycles. I bought the first IBM XT with me and my brother. We actually went to get our paper route and used that money to buy our first computer. I was part of the initial internet. Actually, we actually used to build PCs in my dorm room to make money, and then I went to Intel, and we went to. I started up the Intel office in China in 1993. And there was no PCs at home, and I actually helped to bring that revolution to China, helping bring companies like Lenovo, who was number 7 in the country, became number 1 after we went and told them to work on consumer-based PCs. I actually worked, the web first came, I was part of that revolution. The mobile came, I actually created the first mobile search company in China. And with VR, I've been part of the whole Vive story from the beginning of getting our Vive products out into the market. So I've seen multiple generations, and every generation, the world gets better, right? They're all transitions that actually make the last generation a little bit less valuable, but it makes the future much, much brighter. So this was in 1991. I was actually part of a VR lab at the University of Washington, the HarvardXR lab, with Professor Tom Furness. And training on devices that look like this and weighed a lot more. This thing was about 10 or 15 times heavier, cost 400 times more, and our resolution now is 100 times better than this device. And this was a multi-$100,000 device. I was actually part of the, as you Washington, I did natural language processing research. This was in 1993. I had a little microphone on because I was doing voice controlled systems, programming neural network chips that we actually first did on breadboards and then we printed it out. And it was programming and assembly every single line by hand, without IDE. In 2000, I graduated from University of Washington with my brother, who's actually sitting there. And I studied AI and symbolic AI at MIT. So I've been part of both of the VR and XR and AI kind of path over the last couple dozen years. So this was me in 2005 in China, creating the first natural language mobile search system. So you have to send a text message to our server, and it comes back with an answer. Kind of what BCAS is doing now. So we did that 18 years ago. But with little phones like this, so we wasn't very advanced. But you can actually have a conversation with them, a multi-threaded conversation. So, having gone through some of this, I see a lot of myths out there, a lot of misunderstandings. So I wanted to kind of bring up the top ones here. So first is a lot of people say, hey, AI is hot, so XR metaverse is dead. Why are you guys even doing this? It's over. It's actually not true, and I think at the end of this talk you'll agree with me. People say, oh, AR is the future. It's not about VR. The reality is that AR and VR are going to converge. You're going to have a device like that I guess it has AR mode, it has VR mode, and it's going to be on your head most of the time if you're awake. Some people say, oh, Apple's coming. They're going to dominate everything. There's no hope for anybody else. The reality is that Apple, even their most successful device, the iPhone, is a 20% market share, right? On the PC side, they're 10% market share. So having Apple come to the market, it's a great thing because it will push the entire industry up. It will create it will change the perception of XR being a fringe technology to XR being a mass market. People will say HMD prices are too expensive. That's the reason why it's been not working. No, actually it's not. Devices are $200, $300, $400, $500. I mean, this is the same price or less than average smartphones. And so it's not the price. It's definitely not the price. It's actually all about the content. It's all about the use case. And I'll tell you why all of this happening right now with generative AI is going to solve that big issue. Some people will say, hey, VR XR, put it on, it's going to make you sick. You can see I just wore that for the last 20 minutes, watching something on. I use it every day. It doesn't make you sick. If you use properly, create software on the new generation of hardware, it's not an issue. I'll actually have some data on that. Consumer VR segment is, you gotta get consumer going first. That the reality is that most other technology transition in the past, it's always been B2B that actually accepts it first because they can afford the price, they can get the value of it. And after that, if the prices come down, then it goes to consumers. Right? So it's actually the opposite of what a lot of people do. People say metaverse is a fad, it's going to be gone. It's like 3D TV, or some people say, oh, it's already I'm already making the metaverse. And both of those not true. So the real metaverse is something that is going to come in the next few years when we actually have interconnected open world, right? And that hasn't happened. Some people say, oh, the metaverse is all about Web3, it's about decentralization, and you gotta get, some land and blah, blah, blah. The Web3 movement and the metaverse movement, they're actually two separate independent movements. There's some overlap, but they're not complete. You don't need to have a fully decentralized thing for it. And then people will say, oh, AI is already sentient, or AI can never be sentient because it's just hardware. The reality is somewhere in between, and we'll talk about that as well. And then the last one is AI is going to take all our jobs. But then there'll be some people say, hey, AI is going to take all our jobs, so we don't have to work anymore, we're free. So it's probably also somewhere in between that. Oh, and the last one, of course. AI and AGI, it's the doom of humanity. And then some people say it's going to save our world. There's also truth in both of those, so we'll talk about that as well. At the end of the day, there's a lot of truth in this stuff, but none of those are absolutely true, right? And none of them are absolutely false. So first I'll tackle the topic of, in 1897, Mark Twain said, the report to my death was fairly exaggerated. I think that's true right now with the metaverse and XR, because I hear that every day. I just saw last week 3 or 4 articles saying the metaverse is dead again, or AR XR is dead. The reality is that it's gone through multiple cycles. When I was studying in the 90s, and then it had the XR or VR winter. It had it again a few years ago. Right? This is right before it was winter, right before the whole Facebook Meta announcement, and then it became hot again. Right? If you look, AI had the same problem, and in the 1970s, 80s, and then 80s and 90s, there was also multiple cycles where AI had its winters. And its winters were like a 15-year winter. So it's all technology goes through cycles. I just want to kind of remind people. So don't get too riled up whenever people say something is dead or something is not. So what is the metaverse? I think that's something that there's been a lot of confusion about, because everybody has different definitions. Some of them are super long, some of them are short. So I wanted to write it in a way, because you guys are all Harvard related, so you're all smart folks who like formulas. So I created a little formula that's easy to remember. Essentially, it's a 3D version of the internet powered by AI, interface through XR. That's it. Right? Simple. You don't have to do a lot of this and that. Some people make a half-page long definition, and nobody's remembering it. So I actually checked with my friend Ms. Stevenson, who wrote the book, Snowcrash, who defined the metaverse, and he said, yeah, that makes sense to me. I go with that. So if it's good enough for Neil, it's good enough for me. And if you look at why 3D, right? Because if you look at how content has evolved over the last several hundred years, we've gone from paper and text, which is essentially kind of no D, to 1D with radio, to 2D with TV, and then 2.5D for the last couple of decades with 3D type gaming, right? With interaction, and we keep adding more interaction, more degrees of content, more fidelity. The next natural progression is actually 3D, because we're 3D beings. We have evolved to be most optimal in this kind of environment. A lot of equipment issues today. But we've been forced, in terms of interactions, to be limited to some things that are currently advanced. Right? We're not born knowing how to use a keyboard or to use a touchpad, but we are born knowing how to walk and use our hands and move around. That's how the future of interaction should be, something that any child or any elderly can pick up and start using. Like that device I just had, I can use my hands to be able to control inside. Right? I just put it on and it just turns on. Right? That's where the future is going. And HTC has been playing a really important role in this. In fact, right now, the top devices in the PC VR, standalone, and the thin and light areas have all been initiated and innovated by HTC. We actually created the first 6 degrees of freedom VR XR devices back in 2015, when the rest of the industry was using Xbox controllers. So we've gone a long ways. When we first launched, this is me using the initial tree, Vive tree. And we had to do base stations and all these, different connector boxes, and it would take an hour or 2 hours to set up. Now you just put this on, and it just works, right? The simplicity. So I think the devices have gone a long ways. We've come a long ways in the last, 7, 8 years. And we're not here yet, right? Because we just did a recent survey, 7,000 something respondents, and we said, if you had to use, HarvardXR every day, how light would this thing need to be? And 70-something% said it needs to be under 200 grams. Right? So that device, if you take the battery off the back and put it into glasses mode, it's right around 200 grams. So we're kind of right at that borderline. So in the next couple of years, I think we're going to get very, very close to a device that the majority of people, not the very niche enthusiasts, are willing to wear on a daily basis. And if you look, it's not just HTC. I think the rest of the industry is all coming along. We were the first to come out with these thin light devices, but everybody else, Pico and Meta, they're also doing it as well. And in another month or so, I hear there's another company in Cupertino that might be but they've been saying that for a while, so don't always believe your rumors. So let's talk a little bit about screens, right? If you look at the screens, 100 years ago we had 0 screens. And then we had the first big screen, the silver screen that came in 1895 with the Lumiere brothers. But over the last 100 years or so, we've been adding screens every few decades. And then you look at this trend, you're thinking, hey, in another 20 years, we're going to have 10 more screens. It's actually the exact opposite. What we're going to have is a consolidation of screens. More and more of those screens will become something that's already on your face. Half of the world already wears glasses. And if that glasses now is able to essentially simulate every other screen and be able to have both location-based and positional and be able to give you intelligence, there's no reason for you not to be wearing this device. In fact, if you're not wearing it, you're going to feel not only less informed, but you're going to actually feel dumber than everybody else around you, because all that information that everybody else gets on their phone and PC today will be immediately available to you on your head. And at some point, we're going to have a chip in our head. Now, this is U.S. data for media consumption. If you see kind of over the last 10 years, the TV's kind of gone down a lot, and then mobile's really gone up. Right? Over the next 10 years, what I think we're going to find is that slope gets a lot more dramatic. Where, I think very few of you guys watch TV anymore. You might see me sometimes. But in radio, everything, all those traditional media will go down. Mobile will start to go up still for a little while. And then somewhere around the middle of this decade, we're going to have a rise in XR device. And by that time, essentially the entire day we're going to be consuming something because we're going to have this thing on our head. And whether or not it's seen the real world or whether or not it's seen a virtual world, it really doesn't matter. You're going to be seeing it through some other lens. Now, there was a question earlier, AR is better or VR is better. So according to this guy,
good grief, Mark.
He said VR is 1,000 times bigger than AR. There's some people who will actually go the opposite and say AR is much better because it's more about the real world. The reality is that neither is better. Neither is going to be bigger. They're going to be both equally the same, and you're going to instantly switch between them. Right? And the reason he thinks that VR is better is because he thinks most people's regular lives are not that exciting, right? So they would rather go into a virtual world. And I think there's some truth to the fact that having the ability to transfer yourself to any world, anywhere, you don't have to limit to your physical
Netscape.
There's definitely a lot of value to that, particularly in, let's say, emerging countries or where people just have a very small space. And why they don't necessarily want to just be limited to that space. So I think that's where he's coming from. He also said something else that I think is actually quite interesting. He said, software is eating the world, and because of that, he's made billions of dollars. So invests in a lot of software companies. Now, there's somebody else who said something a little bit different a few years later. In 2017, Jensen Huang said, AI is going to eat software, right? And he's made a few $2 billion. So, what do we got to say next? I don't know. I have to figure that out. But I think, the AI trend is definitely real. It's coming. And it's becoming a lot more real now than it ever has been. It always felt like AI was going to be important, but it's going to be 10 years away. Right? Now you can see it's actually going to be coming almost instantly. This is a chart of the size of AI models over the last 60 years, 70 years. And it looks like an exponential chart, right? But look at the log, look at the dimension on the left, right? The scale here is actually already a logarithmic scale. So you have an exponential curve on a logarithmic scale. So this is a stacked exponential. Very few technologies have that, right? You talk about Moore's law. Moore's law is a straight line on a logarithmic scale. This is a exponential curve on a logarithmic scale. So this tells you how much this technology is growing and how impressive. In fact, if you look at the right side is our brain, 80 billion or so neurons. That's about the size of the scale of where devices are about now. It's somewhere between 100 to 500 billion parameters. If you look at the interconnections, there's about 100 billion
I didn't realize how packed it
interconnections or synapses between our nerves. So in another year or so, we're probably going to get to that scale in terms of size of these VR, of these AI models. Okay. So we're getting close from a pure size scale perspective of duplicating the human brain. So, you look at AI, so what is it? You hear about it, you hear a lot of words that are being used in that space. And it's confusing because there's just too many words coming out. And they're coming out faster and faster every day. Like new terms, new ways, new tools, and it's confusing. So I looked at this list that I was writing, like, what are some of the common terms that we need to talk about for this presentation? I was like, man, how do you organize it? So I said, hey, you know what, I'm just going to feed it in the chat GPT. And it helped me organize it. Which actually, I think it did a pretty good job. It kind of created 4 different columns. Each column representing different kind of large categories. AI concepts, AI techniques, AI applications, and then human AI concerns. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I'm going to try and spend 2-3 minutes to kind of give you a primer on each of these terms, so you can kind of get a feel of what's happening, right? Because I've actually gone through a lot of this. In the 60s and 70s, people made expert systems. So they took the brains of the best humans and tried to put them into rules. And then people created procedural AI systems, essentially putting ways for rules of making things, but not necessarily specific knowledge. And then they talked about symbolic AI, which created concepts and then try to put them into AI models. A lot of that was actually built at MIT. Genetic algorithms, essentially taking the concept of using evolution for AI, creating lots of different models and see which one gets the best answer, and then have those models then work with each other. Okay. And machine learning is just a general term for having machines that learn. Natural language processing is essentially using our natural, whether text or voice, to be able to communicate and for it to understand. Computer vision is using cameras to be able to understand what it's seeing, categorizing it. Narrow AI is really using area-specific AI. So things like I can play chess really well, or I can stack a box really well. Turing test is the idea that you can use a test to be able to find what is AGI. So sentience is having consciousness. Although I'll actually go into that a little bit. Strong AI is the next level of having sentience with AGI. And then ultimately, superintelligence, which everybody's afraid of, or really hopeful. So from a technical perspective, today's technology for AI is all built on neurons, or concept neurons, essentially duplicating our brains. Right? The first perceptrons in the 1950s essentially created kind of single-layer neurons. Later on, we started getting neural networks that became more and more deep. And then in the last 15, 20 years, the deep learning concept has really gotten more accepted. Recurrent networks allows you to take feedback between the results back to the input to be able to learn even more rationally. Convolutional networks allows you to more parallel the content so that you can do pictures or video in a much more efficient manner. And then generative adversarial networks allows you to have multiple engines compete against each other or ask each other questions to see if you can get to a better result, having essentially AI teach AI. Transformers is something that came out in 1997 from the Google app that became a new architecture that is the basis of all this large language models that everybody's been raving about. And we train that using reinforcement learning by human feedback so that humans look at the results of these systems and it gets better by human training. we're going to be getting to multimodal systems now, which a lot of them are starting to come out, where before it's about putting in text. Right now you can actually put in videos and graphics into these multimodal engines. Now the scary part is actually we're getting very close to AGI because of something called AutoGPT that just came out a couple weeks ago. Right? Essentially creating autonomous agents for these AI agents so that it has a purpose, and then it goes and creates its own sub-agents and self-runs to try to execute that objective. This is, we're getting to a little bit scary territory now. And now if you add cognitive models, which essentially takes the minds of humans or of a smart being, and then puts them into these self-learning systems. So you have kind of both the genetic imprint as well as the learning. You get much, much closer to what we're talking about. You might hear the terms, so I'm talking really fast because there's a lot of stuff. You might hear the terms A100, H100, those are special chips created by NVIDIA for training AI.
Models.
Okay. So, and they're super expensive, but it's very high demand. AI use cases applications, SLAM is a simultaneous location and mapping, allowing you to be able to move around inside a space. Generative AI is kind of the category term to allow you to use AI to create content. HTC is AI generated content, really category. So things like DALL-E or Midjourney are graphics tools. In fact, some of the background pictures you'll see I actually use Midjourney to create. NERF is just a neural radiance fields to allow you to take pictures to create 3D worlds, 3D models. Chatbots, as you guys all know, LLMs. And ChatGPT is an example of a chatbot, and so is Bard. GPT-4 is just the engine from OpenAI. Okay. Lambda is the engine from Google. Llama is the engine from Meta. And OpenAI is the company that's behind ChatGPT. Right? And then there are guys from OpenAI left to create Anthropic because they're afraid OpenAI is going to kill the world. So, that brings us to AI safety, which is actually very important because as the technology gets smarter, safety is going to be more and more important, so it's becoming a real issue. How do we control these AI so it doesn't overtake us? How do we create alignment so that its purpose and our purpose is the same? Oh, sorry. And then how do we, there's going to be the concept of AI ethics that will start coming up as we think, how do we use this to be ethical to the world, and how should we treat AI agents once they become sentient? And then the next thing is BCI, brain computer interface, allowing you to have a bigger bandwidth interface to the world at 22 Elon, although I think that's much further away than a lot of people think. And the singularity is where everything feels like we're getting to, because every week, every day, there's announcements in this space. And that's kind of the point when we start to lose control and it just keeps on going. Okay. So Turing test, I actually made a little picture of the Turing test for people who didn't understand what it is. Essentially, in the 1950s, Alan Turing, who's one of the fathers of the Turing machine, you guys know, he created the concept of how do I know when a AI is self-intelligent? Is when I can have a wall between me, talk to this AI or talk to a real person, and not be able to tell the difference. I think that a lot of people can debate whether or not that actually is enough. So we talked about singularity earlier. Ray Kurzweil, he was the guy in 2005 that wrote the book Singularity is Near. You haven't read it, please do. He's saying, by the 2020s, AI is going to be indistinguishable from human level, and by 2045, which is about 20 years from now, we're going to get to singularity, where essentially technology creates utopia. Or maybe disaster. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this kind of consciousness and intelligence, the two dimensions. But I think it's very important to have people understand, because there's a lot of people use these words, but I think they don't necessarily use it precisely. Okay? So, consciousness can actually come in all levels. It's not just humans are the only conscious things. You can actually have consciousness, because consciousness can be defined as being sentient, which just means you can sense, you can feel something. Even bacteria can feel something and react to it, right? Ants, chimps. Of course, the more you go from sentience to self-awareness to safety. sapient is when you actually have knowledge understanding. Now, machines in general, we think that they are getting more and more intelligent, but they don't necessarily have sentience, right, consciousness. Now, AGI is hopefully getting us closer and closer to humans, but it's probably still not required to be at the human level. LLMs, there are sparks of consciousness, according to recent papers, that LLM has some consciousness. Okay. Now, what is strong AI? Essentially, when AGI gets to the level of human consciousness,
This is just
then
the
you have
election
strong AI.
portion.
And then what's after that is but humanity is still better than a single strong AI. Okay? So all of humanity's consciousness, all of humanity's knowledge and intelligence is actually still right now so far the most intelligent. But after that, we get to something called artificial superintelligence, which and this chart is also an exponential chart, exponential chart. So which means that this is not twice intelligence, it's going to be like 1 million times more intelligent. And there's going to be probably a lot of AGIs, and there's not going to be a lot of superintelligences. Because right now, every one of those companies are competing to make it. Now, the good news is, hopefully, if humans and AI align, we actually create a stronger humanity that we all get smarter together, right? So we're not left behind. Now, you look at this picture, and that AI looks kind of scary, huh? So that's what I found on the internet for what AI looks like. I went and asked Midjourney what AI looks like. So it didn't look like this. It looked a little bit more pleasing. I'm a little less scared. And I said, what does AGI look like? And it looks even less scary. So I think either that it's so smart it's trying to trick us, make us think it's not smart, or maybe it's not that scary. So let's talk a little bit about the promise of AGI, because I think people are emphasizing the negatives. So by having AGI, essentially we can solve all problems. We essentially create unlimited understanding for humans in society. We increase our productivity orders of magnitude. We solve our energy issues. A lot of our problems right now is because of limited energy, limited resources. We find cures to all of our health issues, so we can all live a long health span, not just a lifespan. And we enter the age of abundance. Essentially, anything we need, we can have without having to work so hard as we do, and without putting the strain on the environment that we use today. And we can enable interstellar travel and do all the things that people talk about in sci-fi. Okay? That's the promise of AI. Now, the other side is you have the fear. This is something I picked up online. It's like the last tweet from mankind says, GPT chat isn't that impressive. And this one is, AI expert warns, 6-month moratorium, literally everyone on Earth will die. Right? So this is Eliezer Yudikowsky. He's one of the AI safety guys who's been talking about this for a long time. He does have some point. I actually listened to his very long 3-hour conversation with like 3 minutes. And he has some points, so I will actually talk about that as well. So first of all, don't panic. Okay. This stuff will happen in terms of AGI, but when is still not clear. Okay. According to a lot of experts, it's in the next, some people will say it's 20, 30 years out. I think experts are now pulling it in probably in the 10-year time frame. So what are the main risks that people are actually worried about? Okay. So the first one is AI takeover. You've seen the robot movies since Terminator. Their hypothesis is that AI is going to be smart and it's going to be evil and it's going to want to kill all people. Probably not really the case, right? Because if something was 1 million times smarter than you, you're not going to want to just kill these things, right? Like we don't go around stomping on ants or bacteria. Probably more the bigger risk is actually AI alignment. Right? AI alignment is about accidentally killing all people. The picture is a paperclip, not because of the Microsoft, but because there's something called the paperclip optimizer idea that was proposed by Nick Bostrom. That by having an AI that you give it an objective, just make as many paperclips as you can. that over time is going to take all the resources in the universe to make these space clips and then just by accident kill it. There's a lot of arguments that, hey, maybe that's probably not as likely because if you're going to make something that smart, it's not going to be that dumb. But it is something that there's a very large debate about. What I'm more worried about short term is job displacement, which is what I started this conversation with, because this is something real, and this is something that will happen not in the next 10 years, but in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years. In fact, I was just at HTC a week and a half ago, and talking to a number of developers, and they're saying, hey, I just laid off half or 80% of my my artists and creators because I can be as productive without them. I think that's going to be the case for developers. People are twice, 2 to 3 times more effective now with all the Copilot skills out there or capabilities out there. Now, the one that I'm most worried about, and I think there are ways to solve that job problem, and we'll talk about that, is the misuse and miscommunication and manipulation of the current society by bad actors using AI. That's something that has existed throughout kind of digital technology. Whenever some technology comes out, some flaw or hole comes out, people will take advantage of it for their own gain. I used to work for a network or a cybersecurity company, and every day there was some kind of vulnerability release, and if we didn't patch it in time, bad guys would take advantage. So that's going to happen. Now, let's talk about the job issue. This is a paper by OpenAI, the guys that are creating GPT-4 ChatGPT, and they essentially are showing that the new GPT-4 can pass pretty much every major test better than you guys. And you guys represent kind of the elite of the world right now in terms of intelligence, and it's 90% plus on GREs, on LSATs, on every major test out there, AP test. Right? And this is what they call the job exposure index. Essentially, what it's showing is that the higher the wage, the more impact, the more exposure you have. And these people used to think, the ones that get displaced by technology are the laborers, the workers, the guys at the assembly line. Actually, it's the opposite. What you're going to find is that the easiest people to replace right now by AI are the people who used to make their money from the brain. So this is the list of jobs that are most exposed. Scientists, researchers, authors, interpreters, mathematicians, developers, blockchain engineers, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I mean, these are not what you would normally call labor. The ones that are the safest, that don't have much exposure, athletes and bus drivers and dining room cafeteria attendants, dishwashers, carpenters, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So either we need to start training different things at Harvard. I think you guys need to think about how you leverage this technology to make yourself better. So I guess I should probably clarify. It won't be AI replacing it. It will be a person using AI replacing it. Because that person will be able to do the job of 2 or 3 or 5 people. And that will make you less needed. Okay? So it won't be, I don't think AI will completely replace humans, but it will definitely replace junior humans. So AI risk, a lot of people are focused on this, the AGI risk, that the world's going to come to the end. The real reality is that if you look at their report, they're saying half of the people, half of the occupation and positions in the US actually will be impacted by AI. That means you're going to have large portion of displacement. I mean, right now, when we talk about 5% unemployment, it's already kind of a big deal. But if we're talking about 10, 20, 30%, how's that going to change? The one that I'm more worried about is, it's a two-edged sword. Right? Every technology is a two-edged sword. Okay? So think about this. What is the risk now? Is that every human can, not will, every human can have the ability to be all-knowing, be twice as smart, and twice as productive. If you're a good, productive person trying to do real work, great thing. If you're a bad guy trying to steal money, trying to manipulate people, trying to do phishing schemes, trying to create bombs, right? Trying to hack networks. So it makes everybody more productive in whatever their purpose is in life. Okay? So how do you adjust to that? How do you become smarter? How do you use this technology to make you do good with this technology and defend yourself against the people who are doing that. The way to think about the API risk is that if we just got a message, 10 years from now, advanced alien species is going to come to Earth. We don't know if they're good or bad. We don't know if they're going to come here to destroy us or help us. That's really how we should be thinking about API, because that's about what it is. It's something that can be a million times smarter than us. It's going to come. How are they going to think about us? How do we make sure that they become our friend, we become their friend, we can help each other? Okay? And how do we prepare in that time frame, the kind of 5 to 10 year time frame, before that happens? Now, if you ask different countries, they have different opinions. You look at developing countries, they're like pro AI. China 78% AI, India 71% pro AI. You look at the Western developed countries, France is 30% pro, so it's essentially 70% negative. US is just a little higher at 65% negative. And this is from about I think late last year, 2022. I think it was December, October. So it's probably gotten even more extreme on the two ends, right? And it makes sense, right? Because what's happening is developing countries see technology as a way to equalize, to get ahead, to get back on scale with the rest of the world. Whereas there's a little certain level of threat to saying, hey, my quality of life is going to be worse when this technology gets out. And maybe there's also some of the media impact of all the sci-fi movies out there. So what we would like to get to is something like this, where we can feel safe having a robot and a child sitting on a field, really having a peaceful moment and learning from each other. Right? I think that's the idea we want to get to, where no matter how smart this robot is, it's going to appreciate it. That's what we call life. So what can we do to mitigate these AI risks? First, educate the public, educate people, because there's hysteria out there. Right? There are people who are saying, we need to stop all AI development, and somebody's developing it, we need to bomb that data center. Right? There's people writing articles on economists saying this. Okay? We need to create international regulatory bodies to be able to create and impose AI safety. Because there is danger, right? As we see, there is potential danger. But it needs to be something that is cross-national borders. Just like we did with the Law conference when we were doing genetic engineering, that they put controls that were across different worlds, like we did for the various nuclear treaties, so that we don't proliferate. Right? So I think those are the kind of things that need to happen. We need to fund detection and countermeasures. As I mentioned, I used to work for a cybersecurity company, and it takes a lot of people to react quickly against people who are trying to use technology to hurt your company or to steal your money or to do something harmful. Okay? This is something that somebody needs to fund, and I don't know if the current companies out there in the normal network security space, and the virus detections or the denial service attack detection systems are necessarily good. We need to create retraining systems. Right? We need to be able to allow these 10, 20, 30% of the workforce to retrain so that they become useful. And we need to create a UBI system in that interim, because replacing 10 or 20 or 30% of the workforce into a new career is going to take time. It's not going to happen. Okay? But I think it's actually quite doable. What we're going to see is that higher productivity will actually create higher income for society, higher value, and that value can be shared through those displaced workforce. And we need to accelerate open metaverse infrastructure deployment, because I feel like that's actually going to be one of the places where that displaced workforce goes to. If you ever read the Diamond Age from this season, he talks about these things called people called actors. They're like the reality actors that play roles inside virtual worlds. I think we're going to have the need for those type of people to be able to create better environments for virtual living. Right? So that if we can create that kind of an open metaverse system, it will create a new employment forum for these displaced workers. Where we need a concerted effort to find AI and the AGI alignment, because it is a very tough problem. People have been talking about it for decades, but it's now real, whereas before it was just a very conceptual issue. So back to regulations a little bit. So a lot of people think that China is not necessarily doing good, but I think in this particular case, I think they're actually a good example for what's happening in the AI regulations. So in 2021, they had the Personal Information Protection Law that essentially kind of the GDPR version for China. So making sure that the private users' data is not misused. They actually, 2022 had the AI algorithm provisions, allowing people to turn off social feed network algorithms so that they have more natural control and not being controlled by the algorithm. In December last year, they created AI content transparency regulation, forcing content makers who are using AI to create content to designate that yes, this is not a real piece of data, a real piece of news or something, right? And having that transparency actually is very helpful with all the deep fakes and the various, the poll pictures out there. You don't know what's real anymore. Right? Now, just last week, they came out with this new generative AI regulation, which I think that the four main points are kind of summarized here, which I think can actually be very effective for the rest of the world to look at. One is creating clear responsibility. Who has responsibility for issues being created by AI? So it's the provider, the guy who created it. Right? And then also making sure that the personal identifiable information is protected from these AI PUs, right? Your background, your user history, etc. Security assessment of every model before it goes out to the public, and then also making sure that the algorithms are compliant to kind of social safety. Okay? Training data has to be coming from legal sources and has permission, and the output quality is decent, right? I mean, you can't guarantee perfect answers, but at least you need to have some level of quality assurance. And it also enforces a 3-month response time to fix problems that the provider has. And I think the other thing is user guidance, allowing people to know, how do I use this technology? How do I use it in a way that is productive? And then also compliance, how do I not misuse this technology? Right? Because once you have this model and if somebody's misusing it, it's just as bad for society. Okay? So having, because right now we have people searching for how to make bombs and how to make viruses and whatever. And if you trick it enough, it will tell you. So this guy you guys probably know, Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite authors, and he came up with how do we fix alignment? He has something called the positronic brain. So if you ever read this stuff, I'm sure you've heard of the 3 laws of robotics. It's actually 4. If you read all his books at the end, he has a 4th one. Unfortunately, it's a fictional concept, right? The positronic brain is something that without it you can't do AI. Unfortunately, we're already seeing that you can do AI on existing GPUs and even on CPUs. So his 4 laws is, robot may not injure a human. Robot must obey a human unless it's conflicts with the first law. And robot must protect its existence unless it conflicts with the first 2 laws. Now, the 0th law, the 4th law, is a robot may not harm humanity by its action or inaction. So I think that's kind of the concept of alignment. He's trying to say, how do I make something that aligns with the purpose and the direction of humanity in general? And nobody yet, at least with our current thought pattern, have been able to find a way that we can guarantee that info. So, in the 1960s, Kennedy said, he started the Apollo project. So we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And I think alignment is actually going to be something like this. We will need to create an Apollo project for alignment that goes across companies, that goes across countries. Because if we don't, then Eliezer Yudikowsky might be right. But I don't want it to be a U.S. thing. I don't want it to be where we have a flag, we have the end, the U.S. found the solution, because if we don't find it, it's a global problem. Right? If we find it, the world wins. So the best, most useful picture that came out of the Apollo project is this one. This is called Earthrise. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but this was the picture that started the environmental movement, that let people appreciate how do we protect our planet. right? And that's what I would like us to do, is to create a program that lets people see the world as one planet, see people as one species. So one of the things I think where AI and XR actually will intersect is one of the ways that we can solve, or at least try to solve the random problem. So Gudakowski said, why is it so hard? Because if we don't get it right the first time, we all die. Right? That was his quote from his interview, his multiple. And I think in a naive world, that's the case. What we can do is actually put every AI into a sandbox. Let it run, let it pretend it's in the real world, and see how it evolves. Right? So create a simulation. Essentially, we create the matrix, not for humans, but for AI. If we can do that, then let it try. We can try 1 million times, 1 billion times, 100 billion times, and see which AI alignment model actually works before we release it. Right. Unfortunately, a lot of people are starting to release a lot of this stuff out in the public. But I think there are ways that we start to have a concerted effort to try to contain the more advanced models into its own sandbox and letting it play. I think there's potential, at least we get around the issue that Elliot is talking about. So let's talk about the positive use cases. So how is AI being used today with XR, right, with the metaverse? Essentially, it's creating every single part of what makes the metaverse a metaverse. Right? Every piece of content, every interface, the ability for me to do hand tracking, the ability for me to do positional tracking, the ability to create content, to develop, to have intelligent NPCs, to have a smart assistant, track all of translation. All these things are going to be powered by AI, or already is. In fact, most of the content created in the future in the metaverse will be done with AI or by AI. If you think about every single website that we have, the hundreds of millions of websites, the millions of apps, there's going to be a 3D version of that. And humans are not going to make it. So according to these various research firms and banks, it's a $1 trillion business, the metaverse. So it is something significant. So you guys should learn about it. It's good that you guys are doing this conference now, because it is something that will have real impact. And $1 trillion might not sound like anything, but it's actually about the size of Germany and Japan, or about the size of China in terms of economy. Right? So in about the 10-year time. So how do we calculate the value of the metaverse? This is something that I also created a little formula to help you guys get a sense. Now, I actually base it off of Metcalf. Metcalf law is the value of the metaverse is proportional to the square of its node. Right? Professor Maki. But how does that relate to the metaverse? The metaverse is a little bit more complicated because it has more components. So I actually created the concept that it's proportional to the number of open worlds times the number of users, the nodes, who are using 2D devices, plus the square of the people who are using 3D devices or XR devices, times the amount of time they spend. Right? So if you have no open worlds, the value will be very low. If you have, if you're not spending any time in it, the value will be very low. Now, the confusing part is probably in the middle. It's like, well, why is, what's this 2D, 3D thing, right? Or 2D XR? And the reality is that in the next 3-4 years, most people going to the metaverse will be using 2D devices. So there'll be a lot of people, but they're going to get less value because they're not immersive, they're not able to really feel like they're there. Whereas when you're actually in an XR device, you actually had an experience. You're not just seeing an experience. And that allows you to connect better with other people that are in it. That increases the value network. In the long run, then sub 2D will actually go away because everybody will have an XR device. And at which point it becomes the same as Metcalf. So the good news is I'm not the only one that thinking this way. I actually, at HTC, I saw the keynote from Tim Sweeney, who's the CEO of Epic, they make companies. And he said, Metcalf's law will push the companies to follow the standards resulting in open metaverse. Now, he said this last 2 weeks ago. I had that slide like last year, middle of last year, so I was ahead of it. So open metaverse, why open, right? And how do people want it? So we did a survey study. 2 minutes. Okay, I need to go quickly there. I thought the time would go to the end of the clock. The thing is, respondents, 75% of people want an open network. So I'm gonna go really quick. Viverse is our solution, our tools to try to bring about this open network. We have one for consumers and one for businesses. And the QR code will get more information. And it works across all the devices, HarvardXR, PC, smartphones. You have avatars with legs, and we actually have avatars without legs if you like those guys. And you can go in with any browser. You can go into these worlds and it's great. You can see your regular 2D work inside these 3D environments. You can also scan with this, turn your normal environment into a 3D world. So you can see that very fine. I'm going to skip a lot of these because I think I'm low on time. Turn your regular offices into a more personalized 3D offices. But not only just turning that, but you can create new worlds with various modules. You can create learning areas and social areas and working areas instantly with our tools. Allowing people to work across different spaces. We help Bugatti build their supercars 40% faster. We help Audi and Colorado create systems to be able to do entertainment in that. We help elderly travel out of their senior homes with Mind VR. People were talking about shootings, and we actually help train police officers to do non-lethal weapon training so that they don't hurt each other and don't hurt people, and be able to de-escalate problems before they create a hurt. Healthcare, I know we have a few doctors talking today. There was actually a recent study that we just did with 400 doctors showing 91% of them believe VR training is helping them make them more effective. Companies like Malala and Kumera are helping patients and helping doctors become more effective. We have, education is going to be a key. And education is really what's going to separate humans from what's happening. Ooh, I think I might have underestimated the time to present it. I'm going to go really fast. Okay. Over the last multiple centuries, we found multiple economic models. In every economic model, we're getting more efficient and more reliant on technology. And at every point, there's different types of key resources, from time to livestock to transportation, et cetera, and now it's data. And finally, we're getting back to time again, because that's the only limitation that we have, because other resources are actually not important anymore. Now, how is humanity going to evolve? 5 million years for us to go from essentially our kind of link to modern humans, and over the 100,000 years, we really haven't changed. Our brains, our bodies haven't changed for 100,000 years. We're just using better tools, maybe healthier, so we grow a little taller. Over the next few years, we're going to utilize different technologies to make us smarter, and then technologies to then somehow connect better with the network and with other AI-related technologies. Longer term, we somehow will probably transform into a non-biological being. I don't know how long, but at some point. And then we get to the end, which is kind of the just pure intelligence. This sounds like very, it sounds very woo, right?
Pessimistic.
The reality is that we've been changing over time. We've been changing our priorities, right? From self-survival, offspring survival, to tribal dominance, to national dominance, which is where we are. At some point, we're going to need to worry about species preservation, which is where we're dealing to. And then we're going to get to consciousness expansion, which after we resolve the species issue. And then we're going to talk about intelligence preservation. How do we preserve and expand intelligence beyond this time? So, in fact, if you listen to Plato, back about 2,400 years ago, he said, the body is a hindrance to the soul. Knowledge of the soul is the only universal truth and the only wisdom. So even back, 2,000 years ago, that concept was already being talked about. So I felt like I wasn't as woo-woo as I thought. Here's something that for you guys, for the educators out there. This is a picture from the 1800s of a classroom. This is a picture of classroom compilers that I found on the internet. It looks pretty much the same. What we need to get to is a new way of educating, where we can actually be in that environment of learning. We will have subjects that are going to be moved out. We need to get away from being a place and being grade centric and being fixed curriculum for everybody and having just problem sets and rewarding hard work and having only tests and individual performance be important and having teachers direct everything. We need to get to a place where it's about experiences, it's about creating things that motivate you, having everybody have a personalized curriculum, having projects that can lead things, having and reading curiosity and creativity, having learning be not about testing, having collaboration be the purpose, and then having AI and having educators guide you. Now, if you look at the examination, they have something called the Young Lady Integrated Primer. It's like a tablet that goes around with you with AI that teaches you. I think that's where we're headed, and the technology to get there is already here. You can actually put a GPT engine model onto your phone, take it offline, and it will still work. So that information can be possible. XR is actually the best way to get information into your brain right now because it's multimodal and it's programmable. You can have environments like this where you have a personalized tutor that teaches you concepts. You can feel it, you would be part of it, and you can absorb it and have an interaction with that AI. And your environment, your room will be your classroom. Sounds like sci-fi, it's already happening today. This is a classroom by a teacher at Oxford using Engage and Live Session, one of our tools, one of our investor companies. And he's teaching using 3D environments. And any student can go in there and replay this in a 3D environment. Is it better? Yes. It actually creates 6 times more focus and makes sure that a week later your test scores beat the test scores of the immediate control group. You can learn language better. You can learn in 3 months what it took 6 months for traditional means. And you're more likely to use that language, 10 times more likely to use that language. I'm going really fast, sorry. And how healthy is it? We actually did a study where we had these kids for 60 days, I think, 60 days, an hour a day. And during their session, their oxygen level, blood oxygen level went up. Their heart rate went up a little bit to be like exercise also. And their fatigue actually went down. And their test results was up from averaging 80 to 92. So going from a B minus to an A. And they're much more willing, twice more willing to keep learning. Their creativity actually also went up. This is a different study. But we found that young kids were 30% more creative, and their tendency by these other methods was twice as good. And this is the result. When you're doing it in 2D versus 3D, the type of results can be sort of like an 8 or 10-year-old kids. When you give them the tools, they are able to show their creativity. So this guy you probably know. He said, a reporter asked him, do you know the speed of sound? His answer was, I don't care about information, that kind of information not in my brain because it's readily available in books. The purpose of college education is not to learn facts, but to learn how to think. And I think that's what you guys need to start doing, right? Is learning how to think and stop memorizing facts and formulas because that stuff will be available, not in books, but right in front of your eyes.
What? I may need it. It's just that he's doing the presentation. Yeah, I know. Samantha's over there.
This one actually is important. So we did a 60 days, 5 hours a day study. And we found that essentially there was no negative